Look who's back. And this time, the two of you are partners in the latest installment of the Pokémon saga. It's Pokémon Yellow, the special Pikachu edition for Game Boy Color, where it's you and Pikachu.
For those growing up in the 90s, it's a real possibility that this was your first three-option decision. Most of my childhood memories involved choices that were revolving around a this or that scenario. So as a child, being forced to choose between three highly unique monsters caused paralysis, but in a good way. The result of this game design produced high replay value for the series, and even more so with the dual release system that was evolved into a tri-release system with Pokemon Red, Blue, and ultimately with Yellow. Fast forward into adulthood, I seem to still be so interested in the basic yet foundational dilemma of choice, and yet it would seem many of you do as well. The Pokemon community has been very, very vocal, especially in my last video, about trying what has been described as the best Pokemon ROM hack ever. Those are your words, not mine. I was called a heretic for not including this legendary title in my top 10 list, so of course, my curiosity was piqued. So I spent the last 40 hours delving into yet another ROM hack using, in my opinion, the best form factor possible on the current market. The results? Oh, you know, repressed childhood emotions welling up in pure retro nostalgic tears that make me toss and turn at 3 a.m. with existential dread. I'm just joking. So let's talk about this fan-beloved ROM hack, Pokémon Seaglass Emerald and the Anbernic RG35XX SP, and how this combination deserves your attention. Welcome back, nerds. Let's dive in. I need to slow down, like really slow down in my personal life. I am often moving at breakneck speeds and really struggle to come down in between my real world responsibilities. I lapse into doom scrolling over and over as a default way to unwind, and yet it only makes the incurable boredom worse. This is something I've talked about in numerous videos in the past, but this kind of activity really numbs my mind, and from what you've all shared with me, you can definitely relate. This numbing really takes away the enjoyment of simple things, the hobbies that I naturally lean towards, like gaming. And sadly, this pattern consumes what little downtime I do have. I've talked about how it's addicting to almost scroll the Steam store page or your Xbox store page or the Sony store page, whatever it takes, even the Nintendo Switch store page online. You'll spend hours, maybe after work or after school, and then you get bored and then you default to doom scrolling on your phone and you wonder why gaming has lost its magic. Well, that's something I want to talk about today, and I believe I've solved that through limitation, specifically by doing this experiment with a very old ROM hack and a retro-styled emulator handheld. I often think back to when life felt bright and easy going. It's when I embraced the little that I had as a child, which really made me feel as though I had a lot growing up. I was grateful for the simplicities of cartoons and secretly collecting Pokemon cards in a household that wasn't allowed to collect Satan's monsters. Sorry viewers, that might be a little bit too personal. Let's get back on track. I miss the days when Saturday from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. felt like an entire day. I miss the long summer nights that somehow could withstand playing my Game Boy Advance under the midnight blanket and still have enough hours left to wake up feeling refreshed. I miss sinking my teeth into a game for months and months despite the main campaign taking less than 30 hours. And all of this was because I was in no rush as a child. And I really want to go back to that sort of mindset. So I did. I took the two things that were the most nostalgic and yet lied out of reach for my personal childhood, and that is the Game Boy SP and Pokemon. Well, at least some variant that could prove exciting with modern flair. Let me introduce to you the Anbernic RG35XX SP. It's a Game Boy inspired SP emulator. And let me introduce to you Pokémon Emerald Seaglass, the #1 recommended ROM hack from all of you, my viewers. Beware, what lies ahead is nothing but pure nostalgic vibes. What you are seeing is a modern reimagining of Hoenn that adds so many beautiful features that it's hard to not just make an hour-long love letter about this game. But to quickly cover the beauty you are seeing, Pokémon Emerald Seaglass isn't just another ROM hack. It's a passion project that transforms Pokémon Emerald, the base game, into a staple gaming experience that I think all Pokémon fans should try at least once. The best part? It's free. Well, that is of course assuming you own the base game legally.
What are you doing? No!
Emerald Seaglass is an incredible experience. It adds a ton of new reimagined Pokemon typings that give your roster a new flair and strategy. The Pokédex also includes Pokemon from later generations, all carefully balanced to fit seamlessly into the Gen 3 meta. However, rather than embracing a Gen 8 polish like a lot of other ROM hacks, Emerald Seaglass actually goes for a Gen 2 art style that's both cohesive and charming. It gives you, the player, the sense that this game belongs in your childhood, but at the same time, it's been updated with quality of life features that somehow make it feel like it's appropriate for your adult-minded standards. The art style, in my opinion, has been really well done, especially with the building and overworld redesigns. It gives a sense of an old fantasy world on the cusp of Pokemon technology, almost like Pokemon and their integration into society is still being explored, which feels almost historic. But what I really want to talk about is some of the other amazing features of this game that really gave me a genuine smile as I experienced them. The first couple of features are the auto run feature, a totally needed addition, and the new HM system where you no longer need to teach HMs to your Pokemon. Once you have the HM in its badge and any compatible Pokemon, you can use those abilities outside of battle, which really frees up any move slots for actual strategy on your roster. I find this to be something that should be integrated into Pokemon in general, so really happy that it was added to this ROM hack. However, in my opinion, the coolest feature in this game is actually the battle background, which really gives you so much life to the wild encounters and even the gym battle experiences. It really makes you wonder why the original game didn't capitalize on this, because it really does refresh the standard visuals, and after hours and hours of grinding, that subtle change in the background versus just a plain generic sprite layout really does add a lot of visual refresh, kind of keeping you motivated to push through long grinds, especially if you're going for like a Nuzlocke strategy or a run that is a little bit harder and requires a lot more grinding. The overall visual and art style really does push the player to feeling like this is a completely new reimagining of the game altogether. The next feature that really made my inner child super happy was the optional Wishing Well mechanic, which allows you to receive a random level 1, stage 1 Pokemon. It's a brilliant way to add variability and surprise to the early game runs, and for those who are doing challenges and frankly just having excitement about what you will get. You essentially trade these stars in a Wishing Well to receive random Pokemon, and if you're trying to build a dream team or maybe just embrace some challenges, you can decide, hey, whatever I get, that's going to be my team, and I'm going to grind this out to the end of the game. Otherwise, you can just keep grinding the well to get some really cool level 1 Pokemon. It's a really fun way to just spice up the game a little bit. There's also some great options that add great replay value, such as hard mode, EXP share toggle, and level cap options, which aren't necessarily exclusive to this ROM hack, but just want to let you know that there are some really good options for replay value. However, the most exciting modification is that Seaglass doesn't lock legendaries behind the post-wall games. Every legendary Pokemon is available and tied to unique events, some of which are accessible before you even become a champion. This change drastically enhances the pacing and lets you build dream teams long before Elite Four. So if you're savvy enough to find these monsters of legend, you can have a really sick team by the time you get to the end game. Now, what really made this experience so refreshing and really helped my brain kind of embrace slowing down and not getting stuck in the monotony of doom scrolling is forcing myself to enjoy this game on technology that wasn't overly advanced. And that really came from the Anbernic RG35XX SP, which is quickly becoming one of my favorite handhelds of all time. Let's just address the obvious. Yes, I could play this game on this or this, definitely this, heck, even these, But what really seals the deal for a Pokemon experience, especially if you're trying to get your brain to slow down a little bit, is embracing pure classic vibes. And in my opinion, that is best done on an SP clamshell design, which is what this Anbernic offers. It's just like the good old days. This device, in my opinion, is very refreshing. Sure, it's not the newest on the market, but in a market where there are hundreds of other handheld devices, this one doesn't try to be something that it's not. It stays right where it ought to be by offering emulation from the NES to PS1 for roughly $65, which I think is very appropriate for its form factor, and it's done very, very well. The Anbernic RG35XX SP is built very nicely. I find it's extremely comfortable for long play sessions and has a really decent battery, roughly 6.5 hours from my experience, which is perfect for my use case. Now, while it comes stocked with tons of ROMs, I can't emphasize enough the beauty and less. I actually removed all the ROMs from my game and only added 2 or 3 games so I could really force myself to slow down and embrace more of a minimalistic approach to gaming, which in my opinion, I've talked about this in other videos, is essential if you are experiencing a boredom with gaming. I would argue that it's probably because you have excess in choices. You have too much, and that fatigue of decision actually prevents you from actually enjoying the hobby that you once loved as a child. I would really encourage you, if you're getting into the emulation scene, to try to only add a couple of games at a time and see how much more you actually enjoy the experience. Or better yet, just try Pokémon Seaglass Emerald and enter into an amazing retro experience. Now, I actually did an entire experiment on this minimalistic tech approach in a previous video, both with a PS Vita and a Game Boy styled emulator for 30 days, and it truly was amazing. I think that I struggle with boredom, and so I would find myself getting stuck in these ruts where I would just buy a bunch of games on Steam or on a digital store site and think that this was going to somehow cure my boredom. But what ended up happening, I would just default back to doom scrolling. So both of these experiments were actually to design embracing less, and it actually enhanced and reinvigorated the passion I had for gaming. So if you haven't seen those videos, highly recommend you go check those out. Again, I recommend you to go check out these videos because if you suffer from choice paralysis and a general loss of interest in video games, this kind of challenge might actually help solve some of the underlying issues for you. Now, I want to say a massive thank you to my supporters, for those who buy my merch like Derpmander and Corrupted. Massive thank you for those who continue to watch these videos. Also for those that replied to my last YouTube post, I have named a Pokemon after you as you have requested. Also, if you're interested in a full review of the Anbernic RG35XX SP, let me know in the comments. I'll happily do a full unboxing, ROM testing, the whole thing. It's actually become one of my favorite handhelds to date. So in conclusion, I found this beautiful little Pokemon ROM hack to be an incredible experience. I also cannot emphasize the Anbernic device any more than I already have in this video. This combination has actually stoked a very youthful passion, and I think it's been great to actually return to simpler times and just kind of stoke the innocence that I think a lot of us have found in our adolescence and childhood. So if you're looking for a Pokemon game, I really recommend trying Seaglass. You all were correct that recommended this game to me in my last video. Seaglass has absolutely been amazing. But don't forget to say your grandma, tell her I said hi, and I will see you all in the next one. Okay, bye.